I'd like to call this meeting of your Newark City Council to order. Autumn, please call the roll.
Mr. Blake, Mr. Bub,
Here.
Mr. Cost,
Here.
Mrs. Floyd,
Here.
Mr. Frazier,
Here.
Miss Hall, Mr. Lang,
Here.
Mr. Mangus,
Here.
Mr. Marmee,
Present.
and Mr. Rupp.
Here.
We have 9 here this evening. Next on the agenda, we have the invocation by Mrs. Floyd, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please rise?
Pray with me, please. Almighty God, we thank you for all the freedoms and blessings that we have and the right we have to meet together to discuss the problems of the city of Newark. We ask that you would be with the nation as we face many dangers right now. The dangers of North Korea, the cleanup of the hurricane in Houston, the hurricane that is heading toward Florida. Please be with our citizens as this happens. Please help us as our local weather gets more difficult, gets cooler into the fall, that we be aware of the problems of the homeless within our own community. We ask that you be with us and give us guidance and wisdom as we make decisions tonight. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Floyd. Next on the agenda, we have caucus. That's time for council to discuss anything pertaining to the agenda tonight or anything about council. Do we have anything? Mrs. Floyd?
I'd like to excuse Jeremy Blake, who's out of town tonight.
Motion by Mrs. Floyd to excuse Mr. Blake, second by Mr. Marmee. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. Next, we have the minutes of our August 21st, 2017 council meeting. Is there a motion to approve those?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Reddick.
Second.
Second by Mr. Frazier. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you. Next, we have reports of standing committees. We have 3 this evening, one from Finance, one from Service, and one from Capital Improvements. Without objection, those will be received and filed. Next, under communications, we have a proclamation tonight by Mayor Hall, which I'm going to read for him. This is a proclamation, City of Newark, Ohio. Whereas it was with great pride that Saturday, September 9, 2017, we celebrate the 23rd annual Licking County River Roundup, where citizens come together to participate in a hands-on cleanup of our Licking County waterways. Over the years, this extremely efficient roundup has gained momentum. Last year, over 320 volunteers and local leaders pulled over 400 tires, 4,790 pounds of trash, 4,220 pounds of recyclables out of our county waterways and surrounding riverbanks. In collaboration with the Licking County River Roundup event, the City of Newark encourages everyone in the community, from families and organizations to public officials and senior citizens, to work together to help keep our waterways clean and preserve our national resources. Now, therefore, I, Jeff Hall, and Don Ellington, Mayor and President of the City Council of the City of Newark, do hereby proclaim Saturday, September 9, 2017, as Licking County River Roundup Day. And here to say a few words about this is Denise Brooks.
Thank you so much.
It's all yours.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your support for the River Roundup. The event's been going on since the late 80s. It's had its ebb and flows, but right before I got here tonight, I checked our registration. 298 people already pre-registered, plus all the ones that keep saying, I'm going to register, so we know it's a big event, right? Great support. And when we talk about a vibrant Newark, a vibrant Licking County today and for tomorrow, clean water is part of that. We're very lucky. Our water is in pretty good shape now. We're going to make it better on September 9th, cleaning up the rivers. And this year we have expanded into new locations. Newark's kind of the base where it all started, but we are all the way to Pataskala, all the way up to Utica, and we go all the way through Blackhand Gorge. We are covering so much of our county, and our Licking County River Roundup is one of the biggest county-based cleanups in the nation by number of people and number of miles of river cleaned up each year. That's something to be proud of, right? We are at the point that we have to turn some people away because we just don't have enough canoes to get so many people on the river to clean out the deeper sections of river. It's absolutely amazing, and it's because we have that support. So whether or not you participated before, and everybody's always welcome to participate, we as a community are taking care of our rivers. So thank you. Very much appreciate the support. I do have registration open through Eventbrite, so if you're interested, take a look. Cleaning up, yes, you get a little dirty, true. Assist with registration, very clean. So there's options. There's options. Check it out and share that we're doing this because it really is special. And the numbers you just read for how much we took out of the river last year, it's astounding. It's upsetting. The idea is that gets lower every year we do this cleanup because not only do we clean stuff out of the river, our culture stops putting stuff in the river that doesn't belong there. So thanks for your support. Hope to see some of you on the 9th, and really every day. Every day is River Roundup Day. So thank you.
Thank you, Julie. We certainly appreciate all your work on this, so thank you. Next on the agenda on communications on the Ohio EPA, we have 2 communications. National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, one in the Suburban Mobile Home Park in Heath and the other in Hanover Wastewater Treatment Plant. Without exception, those will be received in file. Next, we have comments from citizens. There are 2 sections for comments from citizens. One is now and one is after the legislation. This is basically not a debate with council, but this is your chance to be heard. Do we have anyone for this first section of citizens' comments? If you please just raise your hand. Okay. Next, we'll move on to resolutions on the second reading, 17-56. Next, we'll move on to the resolutions on the second reading.
Sorry, it's paper clipped with the communication here. Hang on. Resolution 1756 by Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, a resolution appropriating and disappropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
You've heard the second reading of 17-56. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmee?
make a motion to adopt Resolution 17-56.
Motion by Mr. Marmee, second by Mrs. Floyd. Is there any discussion on 17-56? Seeing none, all please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Blake, Mr. Bug,
Yes.
Mr. Cost,
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd,
Yes.
Mr. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Mangus,
Yes.
Mr. Marmee,
Yes.
and Mr. Rapp.
Yes.
17-56 passes 9-0. Next, we move on to the second reading of 17-57.
Resolution 17-57 by Mr. Rapp, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service to enter into an agreement for professional services relative to reimbursement of fuel taxes.
You've heard the second reading of 17-57. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Rath?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt 17-57.
Motion by Mr. Rath,
Second.
second by Mr. Lang. Is there any discussion on 17-57? Seeing none, all please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Blake, Mr. Bub,
Yes.
Mr. Cost,
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd,
Yes.
Mr. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Mangus,
Yes.
Mr. Marmee,
Yes.
and Mr. Rapp.
Yes.
17-57 passes 9-0. Next, we move on to resolutions on the first reading, 17-58.
Resolution 17-58 by Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Rapp, a resolution appropriating and disappropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
17-58. Mr. Marmee?
Make a motion to waive the 2-day reading rule on Resolution 17-58.
Motion to waive the 2-day reading rule by Mr. Marmee, second by Mrs. Floyd. Mr. Marmee?
Yes, we need to get these funds to the appropriate accounts because we had some changes that took place and we have some bills that are due, so we have to expedite this in order to make sure they can pay those.
Thank you, Mr. Marmee. I'll please call the roll to waive the 2-day reading rule.
Mr. Blake, Mr. Bub,
Yes.
Mr. Cost, Mrs. Floyd,
Yes.
Mr. Frazier,
Yes.
Ms. Hall,
Yes.
Mr. Lang,
Yes.
Mr. Mangus,
Yes.
Mr. Marmee,
Yes.
and Mr. Rapp.
Yes.
2-day reading rule has been waived. Mr. Marmee?
Thank you, Mr. President. Make a motion to adopt Resolution 17-58.
Motion by Mr. Marmee, second by Mrs. Floyd. Is there any other discussion on 17-58? Seeing none, all please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Blake, Mr. Bub,
Yes.
Mr. Cost, Mrs. Floyd,
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Mangus?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
And Mr. Rath?
Yes.
17-58 passes 9-0. Next, we have 17-59.
Resolution 17-59 by Mr. Marmee, Mrs. Floyd, and Mr. Rath, a resolution accepting the amounts and rates as determined by the Budget Commission and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the county auditor and declaring an emergency.
17-59 is on the first reading, but it is an emergency. What is your wish?
Mr. President.
Mr. Marmee.
Make a motion to adopt Resolution 17-59.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Marmee, second by Mrs. Floyd. Is there any discussion on 17-59? Seeing none, I'll please call the roll vote.
Mr. Blake? Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd?
Yes.
Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mr. Mangus?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
And Mr. Rath?
Yes.
17-59 passes 9-0. Next, we have on the first reading 17-60.
Resolution 17-60 by Mr. Rath, Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Frazier, and Mr. Lang, a resolution proposing the creation of a special improvement district, Downtown Newark Special Improvement District, Inc., along with the required petitions, the initial articles of incorporation, and the proposed plan for services for the special improvement district.
17-60 will be held for almost 2 weeks for our next reading on the 18th. And finally, we have 17-61.
Resolution 17-61 by Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Cost, Mr. Rath, a resolution appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation.
And 17-61 will be held to our next meeting on the 18th of September. And that concludes our legislation tonight. Thank you. Okay. Now we're on to comments from citizens for our second time. The same rules apply. Anyone like to speak? Anyone from the administration? Our safety director, Mr. Vaughn.
Good evening. I just want to let everybody know we provided a young lady from Fairfield County, a conditional officer, as a police officer today. So we'll keep you advised as the swearing-in date. If you can make it, we'd love to have you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the administration? Our Honorable Law Director.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Mayor already passing. Mr. Blake is not here. Mr. Bell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one item this evening. Just want to remind everyone, Saturday is the Light the Night car show in downtown Newark. So it'd be great if everyone came out, see the cars, support the local vendors, and also raises some money for the courthouse lighting, so which will be back on the courthouse this early winter. So with that, I'll pass the
Mr. Bell, come check it out before the High State game. Mr. Cost.
Thank you, President. I'll pass.
Mrs. Floyd.
I told you about the Kids Fest the last meeting. The Kids Fest, they had over 1,000 kids down there. My church passed out over 600 bags of popcorn and almost 600 snow cones. The square was just packed. If anybody was around, there were just tons and tons of kids downtown. Everything was free. That probably helped, but you know. And the final Friday for September is an apple festival. Probably a lot, a lot fewer people to that, but in conjunction with the Canal Market. I have been involved in River Roundup in the past doing registration. It is a fun thing. It's certainly valuable to the community. A couple updates on the Midland. I just heard this morning Grand Funk Railroad is now scheduled, and so is Olivia Newton-John. So I knew that they were thinking about that, but it came. And finally, I wanted to mention Mr. Cost and Mr. Lang and I went to Legend Elementary on Friday and talked to all the third graders about how city government works. And we had a great time. The kids were really responsive. They got involved in answering questions. And we decided to have them pretend they were council members and vote on a resolution. And we chose a resolution to end having pizza on Friday. You can probably guess how that vote turned out, but there were several people who voted in favor of the resolution to end the pizza, but it was a fun time. We had a good time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Floyd. They must not like pizza. Mr. Frazier.
I just want to thank Denise for coming for the River Roundup. Also, a great event happened this weekend with the Hope Dealers releasing their album at 31 West. A phenomenal band, a bunch of guys that are locally from Newark. So it's great to see young people using their talents and being a part of this community, being active in this community. The other great thing is Hudson Avenue opening. A big thank you to Brian Moorhead and the engineer's office. Brian came down and worked with volunteers from the HHCA and put up the signs that say the Historical Hudson District and also welcome to downtown Newark, and cut the brick with us all and took his time and really went above and beyond. And I want to make sure that we note that, because so often we get complaints and up here and being in a public forum, you hear often the worst side of people and not the best side of people. And it really says a lot for him to take the time and show up and volunteer and lead, which is what is expected of him. And with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Ms. Hall?
Thank you, I will pass.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Mr. Lang?
Yeah, just to add to Carol's comment there, did have a great time with Bill and Carol at Legend Elementary. Wanted to thank Josh Wise from Kroger, who, when he heard we were speaking, gave 100 pieces of fruit for 100 oranges and bananas for the kids, so they really loved that, and I was thankful that the motion failed. I was a little worried about that. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Lang. Mr. Mangus?
I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Mangus. Mr. Marmee?
Thank you, Mr. President. I need to call a Finance Committee meeting to order. I also want to take the opportunity to thank the administration on all the support they've given here in the last few weeks. It seems like there's just been an influx of different situations that are popping up, and I feel like I just call on them constantly, but they're always receptive, and I appreciate sometimes if they can't do something, they're at least forthright, say, we can't do that, but we can do this. So I do appreciate what they do on a daily basis to help us out, to assist us with the complaints that we receive. So thank you very much to all the directors and also to the mayor and his team. Thank you. And with that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Marmee. And Mr. Rapp?
I'll call it a service committee meeting, and with that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Rapp. Thank you for your attention this evening. Our next committee meeting will be next Monday, the 11th at 5:30 here in this room. And our next full council meeting will be Monday, September 18th at 7 o'clock. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Klaus, second by Mr. Frazier. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That passes. Thank you for your attention.